Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Rotary Club of York, the 22nd largest Rotary Club in the world, and a club that connects our community to that world. Thanks so much for joining us today, our third online meeting. We really appreciate it. We have a great program today, and we'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. So first, we've been trying to figure out how to do an opening song. Now, obviously, it's something that's really easy to do when we're all together at the country club, but it's much harder to do with the technology that we have. So I was chiding Aaron Jacobs a little bit today, since he's our speaker, about whether or not he could do the opening song just by singing it. And he had a couple good ideas, one of which was a Glenn Miller tune. So we didn't want any copyright infringement from our own old friend Glenn. But we decided to not necessarily do that today, but we're going to try to work on that for an upcoming meeting. So we would love to have an opening song here at some point. All right, our last couple of meetings are online. If you weren't able to watch those meetings through GoToWebinar, hopefully you have a chance to go to our Facebook page, click on the link to watch those two previous meetings. And of course, this week's meeting will also be posted after it's over. The last couple of weeks, we've had over 120 of our members watch these meetings. We feel like that's a really good number. We really appreciate the fact that you're taking the time out of your schedules to join us here, even though we're not in person for the normal fellowship. So thanks to everybody who has joined us over the last couple of weeks. If you talk to other Rotarians who have not had a chance, please remind them to log in and watch. We'd love to get the numbers up to 150 or more if at all possible, but we appreciate it. A couple of other clubs in the district are also holding online meetings, Mechanicsburg North specifically, and a few others. If you go to the Rotary district's website, rotary7390.org, you will be able to see a list of all the clubs that are holding online meetings, and many of those are available to watch just as a bystander or participant, or maybe even as a visiting Rotarian. So maybe check the district's website out and see if you have an interest in watching any of those other meetings. A quick reminder that applications for the non-traditional student scholarships are now open and being accepted through May 15th. And please talk with Renee about any questions you might have, or if you know somebody who might be a good fit or a good nominee for that particular scholarship. Now, since we all can't go out and enjoy some of the things that we normally do, hopefully you'll be able to support local businesses by buying gift cards to those businesses. Even if they're not open right now, many are selling gift cards for future use after they reopen. I just saw in Susquehanna Style magazine a couple of weeks ago a great list of the companies and the local businesses that are open, trying to sell gift cards, maintaining open hours, doing takeout, delivery, etc. And if you go to Susquehanna Style's website at susquehannastyle.com, you'll see a nice list of participating local restaurants, etc., that you might want to support while you can't actually visit them. Quick reminder that the Give Local York program is coming up here in about 2.5 weeks now, on May 1st. And of course, Aaron Jacobs will be talking momentarily about our club's participation in Give Local York. And we hope that you will find the time and be able to donate a few dollars to help support the Kiwanis Lake Improvement Project. And after today's program, hopefully you'll have a passion for it, just like Aaron and the rest of the committee do. And as I started last week, I'm trying to just spotlight our different Rotary members who have changed their who've changed their business to suit this COVID situation. Last week, we talked about what Small Star Art House is doing with online movies. And today, Brian Tate reminded me, or actually pointed out to me, that the Register of Wills office is now doing several of their different programs online. Wills, probates, marriage licenses, etc. You can go to the county's website and do a lot of that stuff online, which was not necessarily the case in the past. So thank you, Brian, for pointing that out to me. And if anyone else has a local spotlight, if your business is doing something that is new or unusual because of the COVID situation, please let me know, and I'll make sure to spotlight it here in these opening announcements. Now with that, again, thank you everybody for joining us today, and I will turn it over to Aaron Jacobs with our program about the Kiwanis Lake Improvement Project. Aaron.
Thank you, Josh. I'm setting up here. I think we're good to go. Good afternoon, Rotarians. We are broadcasting to you live wonderful and magnificent Trolla Industries. Big shout out and thank you to Rotarian Tom Barton and his son Jonathan for being a host today, who have far superior internet than what I have at home. I need to give a big thank you to Courtney Bailey as well. I didn't realize until this recent week how much work she puts into these presentations, that she has kind of taken on a part-time job on the sake of this club. So thank you, Courtney, to your help. Now let's talk about Kiwanis Lake. Kiwanis Lake is such an interesting feature of York City. Everybody has a memory to share about the lake because it has so much to offer. Whether we take a walk around the park, or we're in the fishing derby, or one of the community gatherings, it's a nice oasis and a getaway for our charming city for anyone to enjoy. But sometimes we forget that this is not a natural body of water. In fact, Kiwanis Lake was a gift to us from a generation of a long time ago. And that is the point of today's program. We're talking about a gift that is given to us where we now need to contribute our gifts to the generations of tomorrow. So as we look at Kiwanis Lake from the perspective of it being environmental or aesthetic or ecological or mechanical, let's not forget the gift perspective and what that should mean to us today. So that said, here is our agenda this morning or this afternoon. We're going to talk about the history of the lake, then we're going to talk about the needs assessment we did, and then what the action plan is. Here's a couple quick shots of the lake. You can see the original placard in the upper left-hand corner from when it was installed in 1937. The other photographs are what the lake looks like on a fine March day in 2020 before we got into lockdown. To talk about the history of the lake, I really tried my best to research this. I found it to be a lot more difficult than I was expecting. Talking with local historians, I've got some mixed dates and mixed stories about what happened when. So I want to share with you just kind of the things that I know that I can say with fact. And that is, first of all, the lake sits on what used to be a farm. That shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. And of course, we had Willis Run running through this farm. And as far back as we know is 1911, when people actually started about putting a lake that would sit in the middle of Willis Run. But construction didn't begin on the lake until 1937. So there's this 26-year gap between when it was a concept and when it became an actual lake. And I have no idea why it took so long. If you look here to the left-hand side, it is the oldest concept plan I could find of the lake. It dates back to 1911. You'll see it's simply called Lake, creative, and it's an addition to Farquhar Park. Nowhere is it mentioned anything about the Kiwanis Club. I don't know how the Kiwanis Club got involved with it or when. But then if you look on the right-hand side, most of us, this is a shot of what it looked like before it was developed, and most of us will have a reference point with that rectangle sitting in the middle of the photograph. That is what most of us remember as being the Boys Club of York. Fast forward 26 years to 1937, here's the lake under construction. If you're having a hard time visualizing that, if you look at the bottom right-hand side of that circle, you will see the signature island of Kiwanis Lake. And then moving ahead 1 year, this is what the lake looked like when it was completed. And I'm making you play Where's Waldo with the lake for a reason. This will help. You'll see it in the circle again with the signature island. But look to everything to the north and the west of Kiwanis Lake. And it is predominantly farmland. That's going to be an important feature when we talk about why the lake is the way it is today. So let's talk about the needs assessment. Most of us remember that Preserve Planet Earth got involved with Kiwanis Lake about 5 years ago with a grant from RBC Wealth Management to install a floating island. We were excited about it, we did it, and we looked at it and go, well, gee whiz, we know this isn't going to be enough with this little island, but it's a good start. And we really started focusing on that floodgate that we knew wasn't working. But at that time, we just couldn't get our heads wrapped around it enough to get a start on it. So we just kind of tabled it for another day. Well, that another day came in around 2018 when we started to see the Facebook comments coming up in the discussion groups about the state of the lake. And some of them were extremely nasty. And they weren't necessarily wrong. There was a lot of what they called lake scum, pollution, trash, litter, animal feces around the lake. It was a very unpleasant place to be at that time. We as the PPE committee recognized that we couldn't just brush this aside anymore. We needed to step up to help our community and help our city restore this asset feature. And here to kind of drive the point home, this is the lake in March, and this is the lake, I hate to say it, on a good day. And if I were to use the word water quality, I'd use it very loosely, as you see all those things floating in the water. And I apologize to anybody who's eating their lunch right now, what I've just exposed you to. So what happened, right? We talked about that picture from 1938, and a thank you to Joe Stein, our Rotarian, who provided those to me. But what it shows is that before that time, although that farmland, everything feeding Willis Run into Kiwanis Lake was runoff from farmland. And who had the crystal ball over 100 years ago to say, well, what if that changes? No one did. But what changed is now upstream we have things such as the Delco Plaza, the West Manchester Mall, Route 30, a quarry, Route 74, all the housing developments and stores that popped up around that. That's what changed. All of that stormwater runoff goes into the Willis Run and stops and sits at Kiwanis Lake. So there are those who drive through the city and see the state of it and think, well, the city and its residents just don't care. They dump their trash in the lake. That's not really true. The truth is our neighbors to the north and the west are our major contributors to the state of the lake. In addition to that, things mechanical, as we know, they wear out and they break down. And that has certainly happened in the case of Kiwanis Lake. The features don't work anymore. The floodgates and so forth, they stopped working. So all this combined means is that what was supposed to be a nice park has become a collection basin for pollutants and sediments. The leaves that you when you mow your yard and blows off into the stream, it's all being collected now in Kiwanis Lake with nowhere to go. So it's creating 4 issues that we're trying to address. First is the safety issue of it. Because of the floodgate not working, in a rain event, the area will flood and can affect even the roads up to and including Parkway Boulevard and Newberry Street. And every time we get major flooding, the city has to respond by taping off the entire park. We talk about wildlife has become a haven spot almost into excess now for into the lake, and is creating a health hazard. And as much as I don't really want to talk about the health crisis right now, it's suffice to say that you talk about what other crises we have, such as avian flu, we're talking about, pardon my French, goose crap that we're dealing with out here and the health hazards that come along with that. We're also talking about the beauty of the lake. We talked about that lake scum. It's not scum, it's a plant called hydrilla. So for those of you who you've gotten tired of your little fish and you decide you don't want to flush Nemo down the toilet, you decide to dump him into the creek or into the lake itself. It all collects in the Kiwanis Lake. Hydrilla is that plant you put in your aquarium that's an extremely invasive species. And what that does is it grows in Kiwanis Lake and captures all of the stuff that floats in there. And that's the big problem that we have. And of course, we want to achieve sustainability with Kiwanis Lake. We don't want this to be a one and done, walk away and high five each other. We need people to have the tools necessary to watch the lake so we can catch things before they become too much of a problem. So here's a shot of our lake today. Again, you see that signature island in there. And if you look to the left of the island, you can actually capture the little floating island we put in 5 years ago. But why should this matter to you? Why does this matter to the club? Why is this for Rotary? When Rotary, we like to focus on water projects, so there's no surprise there. But with our committee, Preserve Planet Earth, we are known for addressing the environmental issues within the city. Up till now, we've been mostly known as being the tree committee. Now I think we're going to be the tree and the lake people moving forward. But it's also the large-scale project we need as a club to show the community the power of what we as Rotary do. So here's the action plan. We have to address the wildlife, then we have to address the muck at the bottom of the lake. Next, we're going to try to fix the floodgate, and then install new fountains and lights and smart lake technology. Now, I will tell you that there is somebody assigned to each one of these components, and they could give an entire presentation just on those components alone. So I'm just going to lightly touch on those issues. First is the wildlife management. Tom Landis with the city would tell you what it takes to remove manually and physically the feces that are left behind by the excessive wildlife. It takes several men, dozens of men, to come in there and manually remove it, and it's brought out by the tons. And that creates our big problem. This is not something we as a club can physically do anything about. There is a program that has to be enacted by the state of Pennsylvania, whereas they come in and they make this an unpleasant environment for the wildlife. Interestingly enough, Canadian geese are an endangered species. At the same time, they're also an invasive species for us. So there has to be a balance. So the state will come in and disrupt their living patterns by introducing noise. Dogs chase them around. They can add all the eggs. And it takes at least 2 years, sometimes more, to reduce that population because they leave and they don't want to come back. But again, that's not something that we as a club can do. That's something the state has to do. And this will not eliminate the geese entirely. This isn't making them go away. It's reducing it to the acceptable level. So you can see the shot today of what people are typically seeing when you go to the lake. That's just a fraction of the geese you see. And where that looks like a kind of fun picture of everybody feeding the geese and having a good time, the reality is this is what it leaves behind. This is what we're asking kids to fish through at the fishing derbies. This is what we're walking our dogs through and bringing it back into our home. This is a problem. That also turns now into sediment that goes back down into the bottom of Kiwanis Lake. And Kiwanis Lake at different levels can be anywhere from 3.5 feet to 6 feet, depends. But in that depth, only half of that volume is actually water. The other half is the gross stuff, the muck, the debris, the pollution that has collected and settled to the bottom, and it cannot escape that lake. So we have to introduce dissolved oxygen through aeration system to help break down those components and push it downstream where it can be reintroduced back into nature. In addition to that, to help the process along, we can add a product called Muckaway. And Muckaway should be able to, with a number of applications from a licensed vendor, will reduce it an additional 2 feet a year. And we estimate the lake right now, like I said, is 3 to 4 feet of debris in there. And there are people, for whatever reason, have found themselves trying to walk in the lake in process, and they will tell you it gets up to uncomfortable levels on their body in the depth. Some of you will ask the question, well, why don't we just drain the lake and dredge it? There's 2 reasons why we wanted to avoid that. It's a very costly process to drain and manually remove all the muck and take it to a different location. This is also a public relations nightmare. As people get excited about the wildlife and how it impacts them, and rightfully so, but you have what we would only call wildlife vigilantes who will come in at night at great risk trying to rescue turtles and fish and relocate them and putting themselves then in danger. So it takes longer to do it this method, but it's a lot safer and a lot more digestible by the public. The floodgate, a big thank you to Alan Roth, our Rotarian, and Dave Rudolph with the city, who really, this is in their bailiwick and know a lot about this. They're there, but we've had so many flooding events over the course of decades that they don't work. And the way these were originally installed, it created a domino effect so that when one system goes out, it knocks them all out and you can't bring them back online. So there really isn't anything we can do to repair any of this. We have to replace probably 90 to 95% of these components. That's your controls, that's your electrical services, that's your hydraulics, just has to all be replaced. But we have to prevent the flooding from around the lake. To show you the example, these are the existing mechanics of the lake. And this is not a criticism to past vendors and those who put these in there. We understand why they did it this way, but what happens is you see everything's at water's edge, and if you have one event that the lake can't control and it knocks one out, it knocks everything out. So our goal is to replace and relocate these things to higher ground so we don't have that problem again in the future. This is what our spillway looks like today. It does not go up and down on its own. The city does have the ability with large equipment to move that up and down, but they have to keep it locked in place. And as you can see on a typical day in March, this is not what the water flow should look like coming over that dam. Many of us do remember a time when there were nice lights and fountains in the lake. We would like to get that back to have people proud of our lake again. Those features do exist, but they are really not serviceable at this time. It's really outdated technology. The good news about this is that it's not really as expensive as we thought it would be to replace all these components, but even better, because of LED technology and efficiencies, the cost consumption on these moving forward will be greatly reduced while getting the same effect that we all want to see when we drive by Kiwanis Lake. Just a couple features here. The one thing I couldn't find out, I'd love to know more about, is that Statue of Liberty on there. And I'm sure there's a couple people on this webinar today that says, oh, I know, please come and tell me. Gordon Frerick, I know, is on this webinar, and he tends to be a wealth of information. So I'm hoping that some of you can give me more information as we move forward with this project. Now we talk about the really cool stuff, the smart lake technology. Tom Barton, who is not on the committee, found out that we were working on Kiwanis Lake, and he approached us and says, I got this really great idea of how to bring Kiwanis Lake into the future of environmental watching and regulation. And he talked about the smart lake, and what this is, you would introduce sensors that would capture things such as the pH, dissolved oxygen, turbidity, the cleanliness. There's a lot of things that they'll measure so that when we have a problem, we catch it. Then with his son, Jonathan, we're able to put this in open source technology so that on the cloud, we are capturing all the data now. We can measure over time the changes, catch anything before it gets too out of hand, so that we don't wait 20 years before something's a problem. We can do something about it now. But even better part about this is we have not one, we have two fantastic academic partners in Kiwanis Lake. We have the York City STEAM Academy and the York Regional Academy Charter School. Both are going to add Kiwanis Lake and this technology into their curriculum. So what that means for us is we now have the youth of the city watching over the lake for us, introducing new concepts, new ideas, trying to keep all the wildlife and so forth safe. So it's not just Rotary's issue anymore. It's not just the city's issue. It's the community coming together to pay attention to such a great asset to all of us. Just a couple photos of children using the Water Rangers water testing kits and how that becomes a part of their curriculum. Let's talk about timeline and costs. Things are subject to change, so don't take this presentation and write it in the gospel. We're doing the best we can. This was kind of put together before we even had this global crisis. So we're still hoping to start this next month. That will start with the muck reduction, with the aeration systems put in, as well as the product put in. Then hopefully in the summer, we're going to move into the installation of the lights and the fountains. And then in the fall, if the money keeps coming in, which we do expect it will, we'll start to fix the floodgate. And then hopefully by the spring, we'll have everything we need to top it off with the smart lake technology. We're hoping the cost, we seem to be confident about the 125. These things change. We're dealing with things we can't see that are underwater, so that's subject to change. But right now, that seems to be where we are. We have fantastic partners that have already stepped up for this. We have a lot of asks and grant applications out there already, but the people who've already made the commitment today publicly, of course, is the Rotary Club of York. That's you, in partner with Give Local York and Megan. The City of York has certainly put their skin in the game and opened their wallet to give us the seed money to get this started. We have in-kind partners such as Stewart and Tate and Trolla Industries. Trolla is helping us and contributing the controllers and manpower to do that, where Stewart and Tate will give us the coffer dam so that we can repair the floodgate, which is a huge component for us. We found out 2 weeks ago, Michael Haiti from the Powder Mill Foundation gave us a substantially generous gift to get a lot of these projects started. We're very thankful for. But the neighbor to the north of the lake, which is MedEd First Energy, we have a great friend in Joe Malda who also gave us another generous gift to get this project started. And then last week, York County Community Foundation announced that it was making its contribution to the project. So it's exciting for us because we only announced this just about 6 weeks ago, and everybody in the community is stepping up and saying, we're going to help, or how can I help? It has gotten so much gravity that we know we're going to get this done. So the conclusion on this is that this is just a great project for the club, and it demonstrates the power of you, of our committee, of our club, of our community. To the best of my knowledge, this is the biggest local water project we've done, at least in recent history of the club, as far back as I can remember. And we will achieve that long-term sustainable gift, not just to ourselves, but to the future of York City. So please consider how you can give to the Give Local event on May 1st, 2020. It's going to be a great day for us and a great day for the club. And with that, we can play Stump the Chump. Josh.
Well, that'll be an easy game, Aaron. Nothing to it. All right, we do have some questions here, and members keep sending in those questions as we go through these. We'd like to inundate Aaron with as many as possible, and hopefully he will be able to answer at least a couple. So, Aaron, here we go. We start at the top here. First question, I'm aware of at least 2 times where the lake was drained and the bottom dredged. How can the current plans address this recurring maintenance problem?
Great question. So now that we have mechanics of an aeration system introducing dissolved oxygen, it's basically just mechanics that sit at the bottom of the lake that keep things from settling in there, and they break it down. That's what keeps things from settling at the bottom. We're trying to be, we have to react today, but be preventative tomorrow. And then I mentioned about the product in there that uses, I forget the term, but whatever, it breaks this stuff down so it floats up and goes downstream. So basically, as long as we maintain these systems, we won't have that problem again. Oh, I'm sorry, and thank you, Tom. I got Tom Barton here doing my lifeline work. But once we can lower the floodgate too, that helps us to draw a lot of the excess out of the lake.
Great. Next question is how will your wildlife management program affect other animals besides the geese? For example, some of the desirable animals like egrets or other birds that might be using the lake less or differently than the geese do.
The state specifically designs this program to do targeting. And you know, the geese have a specific behavioral patterns where they stay mostly low into the ground all the time. So their efforts really stay in that area. They don't go over to the island where the egrets like to sit or anything else like that. So as far as we know, it really only impacts the geese.
Okay. Next question, what are the possibilities of engaging in sediment reducing techniques upstream of the lake? For example, perhaps along Wood Street or in Lincoln Park?
Well, Lincoln Park, really, again, you're talking about in the city there. That's not really where the issue lies. The issue lies almost a mile above. When you look at the parking lot at the West Manchester Mall, and I'm not picking on them, but it makes a great example, everything that lays in there, the salts, the trash and everything, that's what's being collected and going into the stream. How you can get people to change even just one parking lot, I don't know. But everything that goes, every piece of litter that goes out along Route 30 is going to be introduced into Kiwanis Lake. So that has been kind of one of our big challenges, is how can we educate people who don't live in the city and they don't see it? How do you even get them to notice or care?
Yeah, I think that goes into the stormwater management talk and regulations that have really come into effect over the last handful of years. Maybe those new regulations that are now being implemented will have a positive impact on this over the course of time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next question. Will public access to the statistics on the lake produce public relations nightmares? And who will be responsible for dealing with them?
Well, we don't know Well, first of all, we don't know who's going to really want to watch this. We have the schools watching in on it. Um, I don't know why this would create a hubbub among the community that we're watching it. If people see that there's something out of whack and we find out about it, that would actually be a good thing. The danger really comes when people misread information, and you really can't do a lot to control that. Ultimately, the lake is the property of York City, and they have to ultimately stand to that. And we'll just have to take it one day at a time if for some reason it goes that way, but we don't anticipate that.
Okay. What's the plan and who's responsible for the continuing maintenance after the project has been completed?
Again, the lake is the property of York City, and they take care of all the maintenance on it. Really the question is what happens when we install things like lights and fountains and they need serviced or they stop working and need to be replaced? We know they're not going to last 100 years. If we are more than successful on our ask for reaching out for money, our hope is to open up an additional fund, whereas we can keep backup monies to replace these long after we put these in, so we don't have to go through this process again.
Here's more of a lighthearted question. We don't seem to have goose on the menu at good restaurants. Do you think there's an opportunity for that to change when the COVID outbreak is over and restaurants open back up?
I don't even eat chicken, so I'm not going to touch that.
So maybe that question is best left for one of the other people on your committee.
There you go.
All right. Will there be fish in the lake upon completion?
Absolutely. In fact, our method of addressing the contents of the lake is virtually non-impactful to the existing wildlife in the lake. So we're going to wind up giving them more of an environment to flourish in. So as far as we know, there's nothing we're introducing to the lake that should affect a single fish, turtle, or anything else.
Okay. Here's a partnering question. Is there a Kiwanis club in York that will be working with us on this project?
Yes, there is a Kiwanis club in York that was, I've learned, has been recently reignited, and we have been in communication with them. They're excited about it, and their partnership right now is they're trying to find funding opportunities through the Kiwanis Club to make a contribution towards this project.
Sounds like a great partnership. So a follow-up question to that is what will the name of the lake be after this project is over? Will it be the Rotary Kiwanis Lake or the Kiwanis Rotary Lake, or will it stay as the Kiwanis Lake?
We all agreed on the Magnificent President Josh George Waterway Extravaganza.
That sounds perfect. And then at the end of my term, it'll transition to the Magnificent President Aaron Jacobs Waterway Extravaganza.
There you go. No, it will stay Kiwanis Lake. That was their gift, and we will continue to honor that gift.
Will our Rotary Club be posting any kind of plaque adjacent to the Kiwanis plaque that's been there since the 1930s?
Yeah, and there's actually other plaques when things have been added. If you look at the bridge, you'll find from the 1970s, there were efforts like this done in the past, and that plaque honoring people. So we will be putting up some signage around here to acknowledge what was done and who contributed to help make that possible.
Terrific, terrific. All right, here's a comment from Gordon. It says, without research, I believe the Statue of Liberty was a Boy Scout project and or collection pennies from children. The statue originally sat in front of the York County Courthouse until it was moved to the lake. Leave
it to Gordy. Good job, Gordon.
Thank you, Gordon. I appreciate the info. Next question. PP has done such a great job restoring the city's tree canopy. Will this awesome project at Kiwanis Lake have an effect on the current tree planting project?
No, and gee, I'll take an opportunity to plug that away. We are planting, we're at some point in time, we're planting 50 trees even in the spring as we speak. So that's still full speed ahead, and we are balancing both projects just fine.
That's great to hear. Will there be landscape additions as part of this project specifically? I know you've done a lot in that area already, but will there be more landscaping put in around the lake as part of this project?
Not by our committee. The Audubon Society has adopted parcels of the park area, and if you take a walk, you'll see that they have done some of that already. I think they may have plans to do more. I'm not sure of it yet, but the committee or the club will not be doing any gardening or doing any plants as part of this project.
Okay. You mentioned earlier in the presentation about the funding sources and the partners who are helping you out to get this done. The question here is, has a Rotary District grant been applied for as part of this project?
It's all in the mix. Yes, we are going through the district grant process as well.
All right, this is a long one here. Let me read it. It says, my wife experienced the muck when, as an early learning center teacher, she attempted to pull a sibling out of the lake when she also fell into the muck, thanks to all the feces in the lake. This is a field trip for students of the Shiloh UCC Early Learning Center, and siblings of students were allowed to attend. She will never forget that dip. There's no question there, but hopefully you can get that cleaned up.
My earliest childhood memories, when I was about 4 years old, is that myself, my aunt, and my 3-year-old little sister at that time were walking around that lake, pretty much at the view you see on your screen. And I remember she was being what I felt was bratty. I shouldn't confess this, but she fell in the lake in the muck too, and it was one of my greatest early childhood memories.
That's great. Did she think the same thing?
Yeah.
Last question, unless there's more posted. Neighbors who live in this immediate area of the city, will they be involved with this project? Will they have a neighborhood association or anything like that that will help out with the project during your process or after with the maintenance? How will local members of the community be involved?
And that's been probably the biggest challenge we've had right now is I've gotten so many people that reach out to me, either from the club or beyond even the city, and say, man, I really want to help. What can I do? And unfortunately, the steps that we have to take require a high level of skill to do. You know, I can't ask you to go out and fix that floodgate. It's just not going to happen. There's not a lot of hands-on opportunities there. So we're trying to think of it. The best one I've got so far is getting everybody out with a rake and raking up goose poop. We'll see how many people volunteer for something like that. But as it is now, there's not a lot of those photo op opportunities that are coming to the surface.
When the project's over, Aaron, will the city continue just to do the normal maintenance that they do now, or will they have additional obligations because of the project?
They'll have a few additional obligations. We're trying to keep that as minimal as possible. That has to do with winterizing some of the features, such as the fountains, which really is not that difficult. Dave Rudolph with the city, who's really done a nice job with the lake with what he has, you know, looks at that and says, yeah, it's really not going to be a huge burden on this. In fact, it actually should make it easier for the city to maintain the park and the lake.
A couple more questions have come in. Here's one that's a little bit lighthearted. Our school took a shopping cart out of the lake at our annual trash-a-thon. Do you have any plans for how to handle shopping carts or other crazy debris that you might find in the lake?
Yeah, we're going to put a shopping cart return aisle there in the parking lot or in the park. People can return their shopping carts there instead of in the lake.
Perfect. And then this question is about the downstream area. Are there any downstream concerns for the neighborhood because of any sediment that might be released, or what's the anticipated impact downstream because of this project, both during construction and after?
None. The issue is that, again, Kiwanis Lake, remember, is a man-made introduction to an existing water feature, and it is highly unnatural, and it serves as somebody basically took a big hole and dug it in the middle of a stream, so things are going to collect there. So running its normal course of things pushing downstream into the Godoris and down into the bay, where it's supposed to be in the first place, neighbors aren't going to notice a difference. I don't even believe during the process of doing any of this work. So no impact that we're aware of.
Great. Well, that is our list of questions, everybody. We thank you very much for sending in those questions. It's a great opportunity. Aaron, thank you very much for being our speaker and our presenter today. We have no Rotary gift for you, but we'll do our best to be part of the project. And remember, everyone, if you can, please contribute to this project during Give Local York on May 1st. It'll go a long way in getting the committee the funding that they need to get this project done and have the impact that this lake really needs. So Aaron, thanks again very much. And a reminder to everybody that this program will be available sometime later today on our Facebook page to click and watch again if you'd like to do so. Aaron, any final thoughts?
No, thank you for making this the club project. We, as the committee, and I personally am so honored for everybody helping in the way that they did, and let's just keep it going.
Terrific. Thank you, Aaron. And we'll be back again next week, right here at noon on Wednesday, which will be April 22nd. And we look forward to everybody joining us then. Till then, have a great week. Thank you.